to another episode on the Cerebral Cricketer podcast. So I'm your host Tanzim, and today we're just going to do a little review, a little reflection on the episode that I did with Shariz Ahmad. So Shariz Ahmad is the brother of Musa Ahmad, and Musa Ahmad we had on our first episode. So it was definitely an honor and privilege to interview two brothers that have played international cricket. I thought that was a beautiful way to sort of kick off the podcast, and the podcast launch is having two brothers, back to back that have played international cricket together as well. So I think there's a lot of interesting insights in the episode that I did with Shariz. Obviously, because of the episode I did with Musa, and listening through it, you can sort of compare their own individual experiences being from the same household, right? So obviously Musa talked about the influence of his father, and similarly Shariz talked about the influence of his father as well. And touching on that, what was interesting, similarly both brothers, it seems like they didn't play youth cricket, so both of them sort of played or jumped into senior cricket. So Shariz shed probably a little bit more light on that front, that he played for the second and third team of his father's club, and at I think it was at 9 years old and to 11 years old, or 11 years old he got discovered, and then the scouts, Netherlands cricket board scouts, were sort of watching him. So I think that also speaks to the structure or the within the club cricket system in Netherlands, where if they see that there's a youngster who's talented from a very, very young age, right, at 11 years old, they're willing to sort of scout him and keep an eye on him, and that's how they're able to get youngsters into the system. So I thought that was firstly obviously shows how talented Shariz was at such a young age, but also speaks to the structure in Netherlands domestic levels, where they want to keep an eye out for the next talent and groom them accordingly and put them through their systems accordingly. So I thought that was really, really interesting. And on top of that, I think what was also very interesting is the part where Shariz talked about, because I think I asked him, were you nervous at that age when scouts came to watch you? And he said a really interesting answer. He responded by saying that they came for a reason, right? Like, they already know how good you are. So, essentially you don't have anything left to prove, right? Because there's a reason why they're coming to see you in the first place. So I think that's a really interesting positive spin, because naturally a lot of people at a very young age will get shy or nervous, under that sort of pressure, knowing that it's the first potential big break, or first way of getting an attention of scouts, and obviously it can be a big part of boosting or accelerating the career, right, domestically or otherwise. And a lot of people, I think, naturally will feel that pressure, right? But then I think a consistent theme I felt throughout the episode is that he kept taking a positive spin on it. And I also found that very interesting, because as much like on the podcast, it was a bit of a chill vibe. So naturally when you're in a chill vibe, you're more only gonna get sort of that chill side of you shown on in the interview, whereas Shariz probably didn't. He won't say himself, but the interviews that I watched, or when other players in his team were talking about him, you can tell that they were talking about Shariz as a very animated, very animated character, very out there and very involved and very vocal, very supportive, all that sort of stuff, right? So he's he has a lot of energy about him, right? That's probably the best word. Like, has a lot of energy on the field in what he does. Sort of translates across to his leg spin or his intensity with the bat. So I thought that was really interesting, that very much, I think, that high energy links with that, high positivity of, having a positive outlook on every situation, right? and not to getting too caught up with the results, right? It's just, putting your best foot forward, taking a positive spin with everything that comes your way, right? Whether it be challenges or anything like that, right? I think as human beings, we should always have that positive mindset, try to take a positive spin and bounce off that positivity, right? And I think Shariz exemplifies that as well in his cricket, the way he plays his cricket, and on everything in between as well. So I thought that was very interesting as well, and something for me to take from. And obviously there are other people, because I think naturally he is like that. Like in his nature, he's more likely to not be weighed down by negative because he's taking a positive spin to it. Whereas I guess a lot of people aren't like that. Like naturally, when something comes their way, they'll sink a little further down and feel the pressure a lot, all that. So I think it's just a reminder that, if we can free ourselves and just take a positive spin, then, there's more likely a better outcome waiting for us. So I thought that was a really interesting insight about him. And I guess a bit of an interesting story is that I think Shariz was really busy because he had some training. It was part of some training camp in South Africa. And so I was messaging him and stuff like that. And one time we were meant to record, and unfortunately, I think he had power outage, and he didn't have, he wasn't able to sort of connect with me online. So I think he felt a bit bad that kind of happened when we locked in at time. So why I'm saying this story is because like the way that, he sort of communicated with me, the way he talked to me, the way he kept me in the loop as much as possible was really refreshing. I thought that was a really nice thing to do, despite, I guess, the circumstances he was going through and sort of having trouble recording the episode at the time. He was very much like, a great bloke, speaking to me. So I just had to throw that in there because I thought, like, many people sort of in that situation might, deal mostly, I guess, with what's happening, and which is understandable if they don't like inform the other person or the other party accordingly because of the circumstances going through. But Shariz was full going out of his way to update me and apologize and this and that, and keep he was very communicative and very keeping me in the loop in the moments he was able to. So that I thought that was really nice of him to do that as well. Kind of speaks to the type of person he is. So I guess back to the cricket. So he said that he did play second and third grade level for his club, and on top of that, I know I talked about being fast tracked and all that at a younger age because they spotted him. But I think a similar theme with his brother Musa was that they played with the seniors at a very young age. So I think at 11 years old, like Shariz is already bowling to adult cricketers, right? Which is, I guess, to me, it would logically make sense that that's the quickest way to get fast tracked, right? Or to develop your skills at a quicker rate. Because if you're obviously playing with kids your age only, what's going to happen is that you're not going to obviously learn and adjust because the kids are learning with you, right? Whereas if you're playing against like more polished cricketers who are a lot older, obviously you have a lot more to learn, and you'll be able to learn in a quicker, faster pace, right? Especially if you're playing against, very good seniors. So I think that is a huge boost for younger cricketers. So I think that's just a reminder, like if you have, if you're a kid yourself or you got kids yourself, anything like that, just try to get them into, playing against adult cricketers and thinking like adults. I think sometimes, if you're just playing with kids and people your age at a younger age, you don't necessarily develop that thinking accordingly because you're just kind of on the level of everyone around you. Whereas, if you're a lot younger and playing against seniors, it's a different story, right? You'll, obviously be in the team setup and team dynamic and be forced to think about cricket from a more, intelligent perspective, as opposed to someone who's just kind of in the same boat as you trying to figure it out. And from that, obviously, you'll get learnings from players that are a lot more experienced have done the hard yards in cricket. So I think that's a huge boost and a huge help. And just a reminder in that sense to always, have that nurture from a lot younger age. So yeah, like he also detailed how he sort of played the I think under 18s, under 19s, went through the ranks for Netherlands. And he was also very, seriously fast tracked. So I talked about being fast tracked earlier, but I remember there was a point in the podcast where I asked him, like, did you play any like club games? How many like club games did you play before your debut? And he didn't play that many. I think it was like 3 or 4, I think he said, which is actually insane. And obviously, he was a young kid. I think it was probably 18, 19 at the time of his debut. So, Netherlands crew board will obviously keeping an eye on him and looking to fast track him, and already had him in the Netherlands setup. So obviously he's bowling to the Netherlands national players, and obviously they're seeing his ability and his talent. That's why they're fast tracking him, and I think that's a good reminder as well, I guess, in general, where obviously, like, people, there's always that discussion, right, around, especially in Australia, we hear it a lot about, like, if you're to make a player's meant to make their debut for Australia, they should have like X amount of centuries and X amount of 50s, X amount of runs in domestic level, or played like, 200 games or whatever at the very minimum before they play international cricket. That's the proper way. That's the way it should be done, this and that, which is, like, obviously it makes sense, right? Like, you should prove that you have the ability and you should do the hard yards. I guess logically that makes sense. But I think there's another angle to take from, where if you know a youngster, right, like, obviously, from what I can tell, like, international cricket, there's so many different conditions and different teams you come up against. So sometimes, putting a talented youngster into the mix of the Australian cricket team and sort of grooming them accordingly can also be a leg up. And kind of, when you fast track a player like that, you're obviously giving them the most opportunity to do well, because you're getting them in amongst the Australian team, you're getting them exposed to international players, and slowly they can sort of build their confidence, rather than kind of waiting in the wings in domestic cricket for a long time before they make their debut. So I think, and on top of that, obviously, when you get a youngster into the mix at that young age, then obviously they have more longevity in international, or if they're groomed properly and all that, like, you can kind of build a team long term if they taken care of in international career. So I think there's always those kind of interesting discussions that happen. And obviously, Shariz barely played quote unquote sort of domestic cricket level in Netherlands, and was in the national team setup, which I think obviously pays a lot of dividends as well. And you can tell, I bet it's not just about because we obviously, in doing the interview, you can get a taste of his personality. I'm sure, like, they saw, like, the tools he has and his mindset, his energy, all this sort of stuff plays a role. Obviously, it's not always just about results. It's all about, what do you bring to the team? I'm sure he brings that energy to the team, and hence why, at a young age, they've invested in him. So I think that's obviously paying dividends as well. And I think also he talks about, how he thinks about the game, which is really important. Always having strategies naturally to the bowlers before the game, and having those plans. But then also he can tell, like, he has obviously a generally very passionate about cricket. So he's always observing, always noting things, always planning things, always thinking about things in his head before he bowls, especially if he's fielding, taking that time to sort of think about plans, when he's going to bowl, how he should bowl. It might seem nothing too special, but it's actually very powerful point, right? Like, sometimes I know, even for myself, like, when you're fielding or whatnot, you sort of don't think about anything, or think about different things, like, maybe you get bored or whatever if you're fielding, whatever, right? But it seems like someone like Shariz is constantly thinking about things, thinking how he should bowl when he does come onto bowl. So I think those sort of stuff are very very important when it comes to how you think about your cricket, when you have to think about your cricket, knowing when to think, when not to think. as Shane Watson talks about in his book as well, like conserving that mental energy in those right moments, and also having a plan and thinking about things through when you have the opportunity to do so. So I think those aspects are really, really important. Also, what I thought was really interesting is the part where I asked the question about, who he compares his bowling to, and I also mentioned, how he looks similar to, the style of Adam Zampa. And I think what's really interesting is that he's already obviously identified that himself, but also unpacked that, he's spoken to these players like Rashid Khan, Adam Zampa has identified that, his best, style of bowling is when it's quicker through the air, a lot more energy, all that sort of stuff. And then he also made reference to trying, when he was, he has tried to bowl in a way where, he's trying to bowl a big booming leg spinning, ripping leg spinner. And, if it's a bit, and then naturally when he's trying to do that, then he comes out a bit slower, and that's not to his style. And he also made reference to what came natural to him at a young age. So I think there's some moving parts to be discussed here. I think naturally, pun unintended, but naturally, I think it's important to understand what your best skills are. So I suspect, obviously from a young age, he's always bowled in that similar faster trajectory style of a leg spinner, and he's stuck with that. And that's naturally what comes to him, as opposed to bowling a lot slower and all that sort of stuff. And I'm sure obviously he has the variations and all that, but as a natural kind of stock ball or natural style, he has a particular way of bowling, just as Rashid Khan has, right? Like Rashid Khan, I don't recall like him bowling that slower kind of loopier leg spin, the style of Shane Warne, right? So obviously within leg spin, there's different styles of leg spin, as opposed to similarly in pace bowling or batting. And I think as any cricketer, it's about sort of knowing what comes naturally to you and what you feel is your best self. And then on top of that, as Shariz has done, he's linked up with Rashid Khan and asked him a lot of questions. And he asked that question about how to get it faster and how to bowl leg spin that manner, in a quicker manner. And he's got the advice that you just have to bowl more, you have to keep bowling more. Volume is important. And then he's also said that he's spoken to Adam Zampa, so he's obviously trying to extract as much information from bowlers that bowl similar to him. And I think that's really important. Sometimes maybe we don't even know the style of cricket that we play ourselves, right? And I think even with this podcast, my objective is to sort of get people to link up not just with their style on a physical level, like style of playing or playing style, but also mentality wise, because obviously everyone's different, right? Like we already explored how Shariz is naturally a lot more, has a lot of energy, is very upbeat, very positive outlook in most cases, right? So naturally, if someone is similar wavelength of that thinking, then obviously they might extract or try to take as much from this podcast, as opposed to someone that's a bit more of a negative mindset, or a bit more doubtful, or a bit more has that kind of a skeptical outlook, as opposed to a lot more positive outlook. Not that one is mutually exclusive, anything like that, but essentially the point is stick to your sort of natural skills, and obviously build from there as a base, and obviously train hard and all that, but also try to link up with people or try to identify other players that play a similar style of cricket to yourself, and try to extract as much information from them so that you can take that on board and grow as a cricketer. And I think that's kind of what Shariz articulated in throughout the podcast, which I thought was very obviously beneficial for all cricketers as well. And obviously, as I mentioned with the podcast, I want to take that not just from, I want to also get people to link up with people they know that they have a similar mindset to them. Because I think sometimes, obviously, you can be inspired from someone that's a bit more from an opposite temperament as yourself. But I think in general, it's always good to see, people that are similar minded to you, playing international cricket or playing domestic or whatever it is, or high level cricket, and trying to take learnings from them because they have a similar sort of styles. So I thought that was a really important point. And I think in general, as I said, like, it has been really, really cool, really an honor to interview two brothers. And I think the gist of their sort of style of cricket, as a very from a summary perspective, they seem very kind of chill, laid back characters as well. Shariz obviously also very energetic, all that sort of stuff. But on top of that, they seem to not be phased too much. They seem to not, to have more of a positive outlook. So all these key ingredients are obviously needed to be successful in the best version of yourself. So I think those are the really important points that I've taken. And I think hopefully I'm really keen. Like, we've got some really exciting guests coming up as well. So I'm keen to just kind of take these learnings from, two brothers that play international cricket and sort of marry it up with, other sort of insights from other cricketers, and maybe do another reflections episode and go from there. So I really appreciate Shariz coming on the podcast, and who knows, maybe down the line, he's still a young cricketer. I suspect years down the line, people obviously will know him more, and then we'll refer back to his podcast just to get an insight of his journey and how he thinks about the game, because it was really cool how he talked about his experiences, bowling to Kohli and Rohit Sharma, linking up with all these other international cricketers and his experiences. And I thought it was really cool how he talked about his wicket with Kyle Mayers, his debut wicket on his second ball for international cricket, and the way that he thought about his game. I thought was really cool, that the fact that before the game he was not part of the bowling plans to be bowling to Kyle Mayers because of the matchup of left-handed to left-handed bowler batsman facing a leg spinner. So obviously they'll probably I assume it's probably like an off spinner they would want to bowl in that circumstances, and because obviously there was a partnership happening, he had to break the partnership. He came on to bowl, and then he thought about it a little differently, obviously bowling googlies, as he mentioned on the podcast. So I think it's always important as well, like having your set plans, but also being adaptable and working through them and kind of finding a way. And I think it also speaks to planning that is required before the game, just having that mental idea of what you're trying to do in the game to which batsman, and try to extract as much information about weaknesses about the batsman, and bowling accordingly is obviously very, very important as well. So excited for the next few episodes. So appreciate everyone tuning in. Please share the podcast. Like, we're on Apple iTunes, we're on Spotify, we're on Amazon Music, we're on other podcast apps. So, I'm really keen on this initiative. I'm really excited for, the potential. So stay tuned for more. Thank you, everyone. Take care.